As Dr. Heck mentioned, welcome to our second annual Society of Creation Conference. I'm Professor Gary Locklair, and I am thrilled and excited that you are here. There are so many people that need to be thanked, and I'm going to ask Dr. Heck to do that at the end. But there's a couple folks that I just need to thank up front, because having enough volunteers to cover all this is really difficult, and I had to actually enlist my family to do that. So my wife and 3 of my 5 children are helping out today. You'll see them with the black CUW shirts on. My other 2 children would be here and help, but one's in Missouri and one's in Iowa, respectively. So, family, I really appreciate you helping me out and doing this. I also want to thank Concordia University, Wisconsin for graciously allowing us to have it here, and especially the School of Pharmacy for providing their facilities. We're kind of taking over some of the School of Pharmacy. We've got 2 rooms downstairs and 3 upstairs, so pharmacy students are kind of peddling their wares on the street the first couple of days here as we go along. If you have a question as we go along, anybody who's willing to show their name tag, if they have that blue tag on there, the conference staff, either they can help you or they can find the right person to ask to help you for that. You know, this is a pretty auspicious group, and I'm really excited to be part of that. As a matter of fact, earlier when I was standing outside at the conference registration table, there was a couple students came up, and one of them saw me, and she told the other student, "Wow, you know, that's Professor Locklair. He's one of the 3 best instructors on this campus." And I must have had this funny look on my face, because then she walked up and she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, Professor Locklair. I didn't really mean to embarrass you." And I said, "No, you didn't embarrass me. I was trying to figure out who the other 2 might be." The theme this year for our conference is the origin of life. After a little bit, I'm going to share with you, when I teach courses in cosmogony, which is the science of origin, I usually divide up the field of cosmogony into 4 major origins. Last year in our inaugural conference, we were talking about the origin of the universe. So today and over the next 3 days, we're going to be talking about the origin of life in the creation model. Personally, I need to share something with you. I don't know everything, and I make mistakes. I usually start most classes that way, and many students want a refund right away. But it's important that you realize that the speakers here, if we had all the answers, we wouldn't be researchers. We wouldn't be investigating. And that's our goal, is to investigate the creation model of origins. You know, I will share one more story with you. I used to be an assistant when I was a grad student for a fairly famous scientist, someone of the stature of our 2 keynoters, Mr. J. Siegert and Dr. Kevin Anderson. You know, a really important scientist. And he asked me to be his driver. I like cars. I would drive him to all of his engagements and things like that. And one day as we were driving to an engagement, he said, "You know, I don't feel well today. I really don't want to do this talk. I've done this talk so many times. I'm kind of sick of it." And I said, "But doctor, I know your talk forward and backward. I can give it." He said, "Fine." So he wore my little chauffeur suit so he wouldn't be asked any dumb questions, and I wore the nice speaker tag. I delivered his presentation flawlessly. And then there was a little problem. Then came the Q&A session. And somebody asked a question, "But doctor, doesn't that violate the Heisenberg uncertainty principle?" I thought I was stumped, but thinking quickly I said, "My dear fellow, that question is so elementary that even my chauffeur could answer it." As Dr. Heck mentioned, this conference is sponsored by the Society of Creation. A number of you may belong to it. The nice thing about this society is there are no membership dues. We just ask you to subscribe to our statement of belief and that you agree with what we're up to. The Society of Creation, you can see our website there, thesocietyofcreation.org. When you take a look at it, what you'll see is we began as an organization of Concordia University system faculty. The Concordia University system is a series of 10 schools, colleges, and universities spread throughout the United States and 2 seminaries, owned and operated by the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. And our goal was, let me just quote it to you, to provide support, education, affirmation, and encouragement for those who teach the historic position of the LCMS on the doctrine of creation and to affirm the biblical position on creation. We wanted to help other folks who teach in our synodical schools and be able to provide them with some resources and background and also some encouragement when it comes to teaching the doctrine of creation. We also allow anybody in, even people like me, so if you'd like to be an affiliate member, do we have a special?
We actually have only one category member, not affiliate, not associate. Now you're member, period. No membership dues, as Dr. Locklair said, no obligations. We're up to, 104 members now, and you joining us enable us to swell our numbers and influence, and also give us the opportunity, if you give us some contact information, like an email, that when the next conference comes around or some other activity of the society, we have a ready-made base of people who can learn about what we're doing and help us spread the word, because that's the really important thing, is to be able to spread the word about what we're doing.
For those of you that are concerned about education, and especially higher education, what we're attempting to do is to ensure that our colleagues in the Concordia University system have the tools and resources that they need to share with their students who are the future movers and shakers. So we appreciate your support. So what's the purpose of this conference? The purpose of this conference is really to do just those kinds of things. Not only do we want to raise awareness, and we thank you so much for being here and part of this, but we want to share some material with you, and we also want this to be interactive. We're hoping that you'll be able to interact with the presenters, those who actually know things as opposed to me, and then you'll draw away and also make some other contacts with some other individuals also. So to bring together like-minded, perhaps, individuals together that really do want to either investigate the historic biblical and thereby LCMS position on creation, or just get to know more about what God's Word had to say, or maybe the focus of this conference is some scientific evidences that support that also. You know, Origins really is all about ultimate beginnings. So what we're talking about at this conference are those issues that are of ultimate importance. When I teach a course on this, many students are just intrinsically interested. It seems like everybody is interested perhaps in your family origins, but origins in general is even more interesting. When I teach about origins, I do break the subject down into 4 major areas. First of all, the origin of the universe, and by that I mean the physical cosmos. Last year at an inaugural conference, we had 2 PhD physicists and astronomers, Dr. Don DeYoung, Dr. Danny Faulkner, talking and giving you some very interesting evidence that not only indicated that the universe was created and did not form itself, but that the universe was relatively young. I always laugh about that because for those of us in the creation movement, we'll talk about a so-called young earth or a young universe, but we're talking about the order of thousands of years. And you know what? That is really pretty old, but compared to a million or billion-year-old universe. The theme for this conference is the origin of life. Once you have a physical universe, then how did life begin? Evolutionary scientists would say it was a non-directed, it was a physiochemical process. Naturalistically, the building blocks formed and assembled into life. The speakers at this conference will tell you otherwise. Although I'm not entirely sure whether we'll follow this model, Dr. Heck and I are still discussing this, but the third one, perhaps for next year's, would be the origin of diverse life. Once you have living things, then where did all the diversity of life on planet Earth come from? This is what Charles Darwin talked about. What does a creationary scientist say? Why do we have so many different kinds of life? Is it because everything is interrelated? Or is it because things were directly created as individual kinds? And then finally, everybody who addresses origins needs to take a look at the origin of human beings. And if we can think ahead that far, maybe that'll be our fourth conference. We'll see. Why is talking about origins important? You will likely hear this from every speaker, either directly or indirectly. It's because the meaning of anything comes from its origin. If you want to understand something, anything, you really have to understand where it came from. For example, at a liberal arts university like Concordia University, Wisconsin, we mandate that all of our undergraduate students be exposed to another culture. We have courses that we mandate students that you take. And one way you satisfy the culture requirement in our core is by history. We really believe you understand something about another people group if you understand something about their origin, about their history. And you know what that's like if you've walked into the middle of a movie or the middle of a conversation or start reading at the middle of the book. It doesn't make a lot of sense unless you go all the way back to the beginning. So ultimate meaning is actually derived from ultimate origin. That's the reason that we really do want to investigate origins, is to come up with some meaning for life. Every year, or every couple years, there's a couple standard surveys. U.S. News and World Report does their own. Zogby does one, and there are several other organizations that do a survey of the general public on issues related to origins. And there are usually three basic questions. Which one do you believe? Tick off the box. Human beings developed from lower forms of life over millions of years, or directly created by God within the last few thousand years, or some hybrid combination of those. In a fairly recent issue of U.S. News and World Reports, reporting on that particular result of the survey, this is how the author began. Who are we? Where did we come from? What is our ultimate destiny? The story of, and in the context it was the story of our origins, is a story of what it means to be human. I think everybody, whether you subscribe to evolution or to creation, realizes that ultimate meaning today is really derived from our origins. So in spite of being something not as exciting or interesting or dry, origins is actually a very important subject. Let me share a story with me. If you've had me before, you've probably heard this story. It deals with my oldest son, who is an Eagle Scout. But when we first joined this scout troop, it was a little interesting. You've seen Boy Scouts, right? And you know the scout uniform. But in this particular troop, they did not wear the neckerchief. They did not wear the scout scarf. Now, as a parent, that didn't bother me. It saved me $1 in the cost of the uniform. I said, yeah, that's good. That's okay. That was just fine. The scoutmaster here, this was a great person. It was ex-Marine Mr. Brody. 5'5" high, 5'5" wide at the shoulders. This is the ideal scoutmaster. At the end of every scout meeting, he told the scouts, okay, belt check. What are they doing? He'd line all the scouts up, and he'd check to make sure you're wearing a belt. He's got it ingrained in me. I am too. If you weren't wearing a belt, you were fined. 50 cents. Well, after a few months, it got the better of me, and I went up to him. I said, Mr. Brody, what's the deal with this belt check? He said, you know, Gary, our scouts do not wear the scout neckerchief. I said, I know. He said, the neckerchief, this is not decoration. It's not like plumage on a peacock. The neckerchief is actually a tool for a scout. Right, scouts? Be prepared. You'd use that neckerchief in case you needed to get somebody off the ice, which is 9 months out of the year in Wisconsin, or make a sling or whatever it might be. Because the scouts chose not to wear a scout neckerchief, they had to use a substitute tool, and for us, that's the belt. What's the moral of the story? The belt check had no meaning to me until I went back to the origin. The meaning of anything, whether it's something trivial like, why are you fining people 50 cents if they don't wear a belt? Or or something even more important like what's the meaning of life, is all connected back to the origin. Whenever I talk, this is the primary point that I make. If you don't know who Chuck Norris is, that's okay. If you listen to me, you have to deal with Chuck Norris. Creation is reasonable. Evolutionary scientists and popularizers will say, creation? That's ridiculous. That's insane. That's for flat earthers. That's for people who believe in spaceships and little green people and, goblins and things like that. Absolutely not. Creation is a reasonable position. After you've heard our keynote and other concurrent session speakers, you'll realize that actually evolution is an unreasonable position. Even if you're not a scientist, even if you don't feel that you can actually talk to people and convince them, you need to know in your mind that creation is an absolutely reasonable position. So, you at the front of the room, why do you believe that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth? Let me quickly just share with you 4 reasons that why we in the Society of Creation do believe what we believe. The first is, of course, a straightforward and ordinary reading of God's Word. Sometimes people say, well, do you read that literally? No, I read the biblical text in a straightforward or ordinary way, the way that it was intended to be read. The only way that you can get evolutionary scenarios out of the biblical text is to inject your own ideas. If you let the text speak for itself, you will discover that God created living things. How? By speaking most of them into existence and then by directly fashioning human beings. The second reason that why we in the Society of Creation believe what we believe is the testimony of some really smart people who came before us historically. And that includes both theologians, like Martin Luther, and scientists, like Isaac Newton. If you don't know, there's a long train of both theologians and scientists that believe not only did God create life, fiat, ex nihilo, in a very short amount of time, but the universe, the earth, is relatively young, on the order of 10,000 years or so. A third reason that we believe what we believe is the doctrinal position of the church body that sponsors the school that I teach at. If you teach at one of the Concordia University college or university schools, then we all agree to abide by the doctrinal position of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The abbreviation LCMS is the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. There are other church bodies and other Lutheran bodies that also have a doctrinal position on creation. If you belong to the LCMS, your church body says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, not via a non-directed evolutionary process, but by the direct act of God. And this happened relatively recently, within 10,000 years. And the final reason that we believe what we believe is because of the testimony of science. Sometimes people tell me this is just myth, this is just make-believe, you just wish or want that. There is much scientific evidence to support that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And you're going to hear that today. And in a little bit I'm just going to indicate who our presenters are. And we've got much scientific credentials here. So if anybody ever tells you, no real scientist, whatever that might mean, believes in creation, I beg to differ. You're going to hear a number of them today. And if you want a list of nearly 1,000, I'll refer you to the Creation Research Society. Oh, speaking of the Creation Research Society, this is an organization that I serve on the board of directors for. The Creation Research Society is the oldest international professional society dealing with scientific research in the creation model of origins. We have 600 or 700 scientists with advanced degrees that have signed on with us. We have several thousand other folks without advanced degrees that are also members. But if you were looking for the folks that are doing the science, here it is. Many folks, including us in the Society of Creation, we just look to them to give us the hardcore science. And one of our speakers, Dr. Kevin Anderson, is with the Creation Research Society. He is our staff scientist, and he'll be presenting today. I think that's really cool. By the way, out on the back there is a table set up by the CRS, and Kevin's wife, Diane Anderson, is staffing that. You can join. You can join the Creation Research Society. Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, well, I'm not a scientist. If you pick up one of our publications out there and look at it, I mean, sometimes there's equations in there. It gets a little scary. I don't know. You say, I don't know what this is about. You know what? If you join the Creation Research Society, you will be helping advance creation research. Here's something you may not know. When my buddy Neil put together the reboot of Cosmos, there was a whole lot of funding put into that. Okay? And many folks that I know that investigate evolution get federal grants. Your tax dollars at work. Creation Research Society does not. So if you felt compelled to help creation research by joining the CRS, I was able to convince the board to give you a discount. It's only $30 for a year. That's a deal. If you don't understand the research journal, give it to a friend. Take it to your physician. Okay? Great. If you're a student, we have a really cool deal for you. There are a number of members of the Creation Research Society that are willing to sponsor you so you don't pay a dime. If you're a student here, we have this Future Leaders program. Go out to the table, ask them about it, pick up one of these. If you'd like to be involved because somebody else in the CRS is going to support you, I want you to investigate that. I need to give you just a little background to make most of the presentations that you're going to hear over the next 3 days understandable. When we talk about origins, we're talking about a slightly different kind of science. Most people understand empirical or operation science. Women and men with white lab coats, boiling test tubes in the lab. We've all seen that. Origins is just a little different. See, in origins, we don't deal with theories. We don't deal with operation science because that's stuff that happens in the here and now. Guess what? Ultimate origins isn't happening in the here and now. It happened in the past. So when it comes to origins, we don't talk about theories. We talk about models. Sometimes people come up to me and say, tell me the 3 sentences that I can tell this person who accepts evolution and I can prove to them that creation is true. I can't do it. There is no proof. There are no laws. There are no theories when it comes to origins. What happens in origins is what happens in a court of law. In a court of law, an attorney develops a case. We'll call it a model. And then you come up with evidences to support that model. When you go into a court of law, what the attorneys show you, I guess assuming there's no video evidence, right, is here is a red wig, a .38 caliber special, a fingerprint, and whatever else the evidence might be. And if you've ever served on a jury, there's one thing you know, and that's the evidence does not speak for itself. The attorneys will interpret the evidence. Here's what this means in context. That's what we do in origins. We're going to put forth the evidence, build a case using the tools of logic, and the key idea, and what you need to look for is, so what's the interpretation? See, every scientist has the same facts. Every scientist has the same data. The Grand Canyon exists for everybody. But there are two wildly different interpretations of the origin of the Grand Canyon. The fossil record exists for everybody. There are two wildly different interpretations of the fossil record. Living things exist. How'd they get here? Two different interpretations. So in essence, you have to be the jury. And you're going to have to say, this evidence and your case is stronger than the other one. Origin science is what goes on all the time. Now that the crime scene investigation shows have been on for 15 years, right? We know what that's like, gathering some DNA evidence, etc., etc. But we also know that that is not necessarily a fact or proof. So what we do in origin science is very akin to what goes on in forensics, trying to build a strong case for what's happening. With that little bit of background, hopefully your speakers will make much more sense. When you registered, hopefully you got a... Oh, I didn't get one. Darn. I really wish I had one of those. Oh, no, look, I do. Okay. You got one of these conference programs, and I know you can read. This room is PH008. This is where all the plenary and keynote sessions will be held. A couple logistical things that you should know. There are 3 rooms upstairs in pharmacy. If you take the stairwell up, you'll be right near them, and there are signs, and we'll have somebody directing you. If you take the elevator, though, you know, in high-class places, we don't have 1, 2, 3. This is LL, and the next floor up is M. Okay? So Dr. Gilo set that all up. He didn't want to have 1, 2, 3, right, Kurt? It's lower level and mezzanine.
I just got here.
I just got here. Thanks for showing up and clearing that up for us. So if you're looking, anything that deals with 100, if you have a concurrent breakout session in 147, 149, 132, then you need to go up to the second level, the mezzanine or M level there. A couple folks asked me about wireless access. The campus does have wireless access. When you look on your device, you'll probably see 6 different ones. The one that's open is called Falcon, F-A-L-C-O-N. All the other ones are secure. But if you need to use wireless, connect to Falcon. That's the mascot of Concordia University, Wisconsin. Excuse me, and you should be set. Times and everything are here. If you have questions, then ask somebody with that blue ribbon, and they can help you. I will point out, though, that this evening at 6 o'clock, in this room here, we're going to have a video presentation. Excuse me. That video, the 2 videos are on the second side there of your handout. Excuse me. And that's the video Flight. It's produced by, why can't I remember, Illustra Media. I secured from Illustra Media. Typically you can't show these things, but they're graciously allowing me to show this in a public setting this evening. It's a fantastic video. If you're available at 6 p.m. and come back, I would love to have you see that. Tuesday at 4 o'clock, I have a second video to show you, produced by the Institute of Creation Research, the folks in Dallas, Texas. They've just completed a 12-part Unlocking the Mysteries of Genesis video series. It's about a half hour each segment. I've secured permission to show the first of those. So you'll see those 2 on the back side of your first page. That's what's happening this evening and then Tuesday evening. Tuesday is obviously our big day. Times are there, and things may actually change because I've already screwed up one part of it, to be sure. Okay. Presentation logistics. For the keynote and plenary sessions, when we're all together, the speakers will typically be talking for 50 minutes, 60 minutes, and then I've asked them to allow a period of time for questions and answers. So if you have a question, if you'll just remember that, and when the presenter is done, feel free to ask. I would ask you, though, if all possible, to please ask a question rather than necessarily making a comment or sharing your own personal idea about it. We want to have that interaction, but we want to do that in a smaller setting. So questions are very much part of it, related to the speaker's presentation. I do want to point out our speakers, and if I had been faster on the draw, I would have taken pictures of them and put them up here, but we don't have them. A little bio is listed in each one on the final 4 pages there. If I call your name, if you're in here, and I know they're not all in here because some are setting up elsewhere, if you just wave your hand. Dr. Kevin Anderson, I don't think, okay, Dr. Anderson in the back. Wave your hand again, Kevin. Okay. You won't need to know because he'll be a keynoter. Dr. Margie Bell, raise your hand, Margie. Okay. Be sure to read their concurrent sessions. Dr. Jerry Bergman. Jerry, are you in here? Thank you, sir. Okay. Cool. Mr. Tino Grappi, are you here? Thank you. Tino, am I even saying your last name correctly? Groppi.
My brother says Grappi.
Oh. Why is he wrong?
I say it for him again.
There you go. There you go. Dr. Bruce Holman. Bruce, are you in here? I know. Oh, thank you. Am I saying your name right, Bruce?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, Dr. John Seleska. Dr. Seleska, thank you for being here. Mr. Jay Siegert. Here he is. Thanks for being up front. Dr. Scott Van Ornum. Didn't I see it? There he is. Oh, wow, we're all here. Very cool. So what you'll see, we have 3 different times scheduled for concurrent sessions. Each of the presenters will do the same thing twice. So that will give you an opportunity when you read through the descriptions here to say, I want to do this one, and hopefully they'll be set up. On the front page, like this afternoon's keynote speeches at 3:30, Drs. Bell, Bergman, Holman, and Siegert are presenting today. And then on Tuesday we have 5, and on Wednesday we have 5. So you'll have an opportunity to choose. Dr. Bell is giving the same thing each time, so you don't have to go twice unless you really liked it. Right, Margie? Okay. We have a number of resources out there, a couple of different organizations, Creation Research Society, Creation Science Society of Milwaukee, Creation Education Association. Okay, Dr. Bergman has some things, and maybe there's some other stuff I don't even know about, but lots of stuff out there. Please avail yourselves of those resources. Okay. If you've been involved in creation, evolution at all, or even looked at it in a cursory way, you know this is oftentimes framed as a debate. And it really is the great debate. What we hope to do over this conference is to give you some tools, not that you will debate people necessarily, but so you can share information. I always tell people the following. If you want to share information about creation, then just pick one thing. Nobody knows everything. I mean, people are always asking me something. I don't know. Just pick one thing that you can understand and you could share with somebody. If they ask you about the latest Australopithecine and you have no idea, just do what I do. I don't know. But you can share something with them. You know, the other thing I found too, and many people do participate in actual debates. Some of you saw, the one in February with Answers in Genesis. Ken Ham, Bill Nye, thank you very much. Okay? And those serve, I think, a very useful purpose. But I don't do that anymore. You think Bill Nye was convinced? You think Bill Nye had his mind changed? Okay, you think Ken Ham had his mind changed? No. We know the way this works. It's going to be one-on-one. It's going to be you sitting with your sister-in-law, your grandchildren, the person at work, or whatever it is. That's how things really work, right? Just one-on-one. So hopefully we can give you a little background, and you could say, yeah, there's that guy, there's that Jerry Bergman guy. He's got this book. You ought to read it. Okay? Cool. When people ask me, so why is there a debate between creation and evolution? If you've investigated this at all, you know this is not just a scientific debate. And it's probably not even mainly a scientific debate. This is fundamentally a debate among worldviews. This has less to do with radiometric dating and much more to do with what you believe. When it comes right down to it, and a couple of our presenters are going to be talking strongly about worldviews, philosophies, presuppositions, and how that has influenced them and thereby influenced their thinking in every area, including their scientific research. If you reject God, then the only possible solution for origins is a godless solution, a purely naturalistic one. On the other hand, if you do accept a God, then that makes perfect sense. Exactly. For me, the only reason that I talk about creation is not for creation in and of itself. I know some people like to win arguments and like to win debates and things like that. And yeah, sure, nobody wants to lose. But the only reason for me to talk about the concept of creation is so I can point to the Creator. If the doctrine of creation isn't used to point people to Christ, then I don't think it's as useful as it could be. So I've just encouraged you to do that also. The ultimate reason for this is really as an evangelistic tool. And you know what? Maybe it does need to be an apologetic tool. Everybody knows 1 Peter 3, but be very careful about that last little bit. Do this with gentleness and respect. It's very easy to have a heated argument here. It's very easy to yell and scream at people, isn't it? Exactly. Okay? You're not going to win friends and influence people by doing that. You do need to be prepared. By the way, this is not a request. This is a statement. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. Apologia, do it.